Hi Maciek, I'm going to leave feedback on this shot. Since I think your deadline is pretty close, I'm going to only concentrate on cleaning the motion rather than revolutionizing the act and beat or introducing some heavy reworks in here. And well, I guess we can get started. I didn't receive I think I didn't receive the Maya file because otherwise I could have looked at it in 3D and I could have told you much more precisely where was it that we could have fixed stuff. So I will just do it, I will just eyeball it here based on what I see on screen. So one thing is, I don't know, I'm not very convinced to begin with about the movement of the hair in here. It feels almost like as if it starts moving a lot even before there's contact. If it were possible, I would probably make it even smaller um, and just avoid contact with the wall. I don't know, it's a bit strange to me that you push the hair so much to the right, and once you go past the frame, you haven't come back, and then you come back in here without any apparent reason. So I think in here, if you go that far to the right in this area of the screen, then as you go past the frame of the door, I would expect the hair to pop back into the position. And I would expect it to move further to the left when the head moves, not before. I mean, I don't know, these two frames in here don't really convince me. So then in terms of motion itself, then I will listen to it with sound as well. In terms of motion itself, this curvature of the finger is really odd to look at. This pose of the arm is a bit strange. I think you should really activate stretch on this rig really. And this pose here is really 3D. I mean, I would have expected the shoulder to be somewhere over there and perhaps the arm to be a bit more to the right. And I would expect the hand to have a pose, any pose, but not the pose it had when it was against the door, okay? So in there, I wouldn't know exactly how to pose this thing, I guess. But I would probably expect the index to be more extended than the other fingers, just so that I have a clear silhouette in there. Right now it looks really odd. But yeah, I would need to look at this in 3D to pose it. And then this is this pose is a typical 3D rig pose that looks like a fork or a rake. Again, this needs to be fixed. And this is clearly stretched, but I mean, you can stretch stuff. Some animation allows you to do that, but it still needs to look reasonably believable, okay? So in here, I would kind of think that the elbow should either stay out or it should stay in. But this kind of stretch in here is really strange to look at, especially considering the next frame you're going this way. I don't know, perhaps you could have been already in with the elbow in the previous poses. Something odd going on in this area of the screen. And this pose of the hand looks really ugly because of course it feels like you're using the global finger control, the control that curls fingers by each phalanx by the same amount every time, and never gets you a decent pose. This looks like some sort of rake again. I mean, you would be much better off if you decided to give instead a decent silhouette to this guy. Okay, so that we can recognize it's a hand. And then there's the arc of this hand, which is really strange because you go up diagonally, then left diagonally, then vertical diagonally, then you go top right, top left, vertical up, diagonal right, and then left. So you're doing something like this in here, it looks really strange. In fact, if you look at it, you can feel the motion is broken. I may be wrong, but if I look back at my experience animating these kind of shots, my experience is that at times I really wanted to go frame by frame and tweak every single position, but I found that I just don't manage to do it. When I try to control every single frame, I just end up doing something really, really harsh and not good looking. In my opinion, you should probably fix this pose on 76. Then you should probably have a breakdown. Then you should probably uh, keep, I don't know, the pose at around 84. I would suspect, and then go in the middle and add a couple of breakdowns to decide what's the arc you're going to have in there, because right now it's just way too much zigzagging there. And in this pose, for the fingers, they're all broken, and this pose is not telling us anything apart from the fact that it's strange. Okay, I mean, if you're short of time, then just mirror the pose on the other side and use that one instead. and and I would say stop changing these fingers poses in just 1, 2, 3 frames. We always have different poses. Keep it up, keep the pose a tiny bit so that we can read it and then change it if there's the need to do it. In general, however, the problem with this arc is that you keep on changing the arc and even the follow through doesn't seem to be working in 3D. I think you need to look at the 3D point of view of this and see what's going on in there, because it's really, really strange. And again, I mean, this pose is super defaulty, and in here you just pass with 1 frame only, you change dramatically the pose, but there's still there really is no reason for you to change the pose that much, I think, at this stage. Perhaps you could have started a bit earlier to have a pose more similar to the one you're going to have later on. And in general, it's a bit weird because it feels like all the fingers have the same spacing when you move up. And then it's a bit strange because you go down with the hand on the door there, and then you're not really holding up that door. And it's a bit strange that the elbow, that the shoulder here stops moving before the door does. I would expect if it's true that this hand is on the door, I would expect the arm to move with the door more or less. So I think that's something that you can investigate. This accent with the arm moving, with the hand moving up, I think rotating the hand in here in just 1 frame from this to this is a bit too much. I think you would have been better off if you were showing us already a bit more of the top of the palm there, so that when you go in here, perhaps we still can see perhaps a bit of the thumb, so that when you are in this pose with this rotation, it's going to look a bit nicer. And again, you should really try to have the poses of the hand a bit more natural, because right now they really look like the kind of pose that the rig would give you, which if you're lucky is a nice pose, but more often than not in 3D you're not lucky. So I'll just think about hands a bit more. In here you have this arc which is a bit too tense, I think, and in just 1 frame, in 3 frames you are moving up with the elbow. So if we track the elbow, it goes up, comes back down, and then sort of moves to the right, and then comes back up again, and then stays there, and then comes back down. So again, in just 3 frames, you have a super zigzagging motion that makes everything read super noisy. So you want to clean that one. I mean, my suspicion is that you have plenty of keys, probably one every frame in some of the limbs in here, which you don't really need that. I mean, to make this thing work, you need probably 1 key in here for the arm, perhaps 1 key here, so perhaps 128, 130, and then 132, and then I would probably do 136 and go after that. I've done it. I would go at 134 and sort of decide what's the breakdown there, where's the arc, because you have a lot of noise in there in the elbow, and I just don't think that's going to cut it for if you want to do really high-end animation on this piece. Then similarly, when the hand comes up there to the chin, it sort of goes there. It's a bit strange that the arc of the palm of the hand there is also strange, because it goes down this way and then starts going down this way and then to the right. So you're telling us I'm going to do this kind of arc, which is a counterclockwise arc, and then you're telling us after doing this, you're telling us no, it's not true, I'm going down this way. And so the audience is thinking, okay, well, it's going down. So we take the going down like so, and then we think, well, now it's going to go down there, or sort of stop, right? And it is stopping for one frame, and then it stops for one other. It freezes completely there. See that? Freezes completely, and then all of a sudden you move up again, and then you move to the left, go straight left, and then you move up. So in there, and then you have this massive rotation which doesn't seem to require the wrist translation to do anything, and then for some reason in one frame you move to the right, and then you move to the right again, and then you stay there. I don't know, in here I feel like you have to decide what's the gesture and just put down the beginning pose, the end pose, then the anticipation, then the follow through, and then go in the middle as a breakdown and find out what the breakdown is for that arc. Just decide what the arc is. It feels to me that you're trying to animate this thing straightforward, which, you know, I've seen some people doing it, and they were very talented and experienced animators, but it's kind of difficult to do at the beginning. So I would probably stick to knowing when is it that we have a pose there and have the key poses there before going there and going frame after frame in the timeline and trying to fix that. You have a clear intersection here with the chin, and yeah, you have the feeling generally that the wrist is going to glue to the chin, which is not what we want. I mean, there is some overlap, there is some follow through that needs to happen there. You cannot just glue a limb to another. Then let's have a look at it with the audio, just a second, so that we can tell what's going on.
I know you weren't following me today.
I wasn't following? What? No, I was at the mall, I was shopping. No, I was at the mall, I was shopping. No, I was at the mall, I was shopping. No, I was at the mall, I was shopping. No, I was at the mall, I was shopping.
I think this accent at the mall, I think this finger here is a bit too much. I mean, I understand that it's cool to do overlap, it's fun, but if you have this much overlap going on in a finger, you need to understand if that's what the character wants, if that is supported by storytelling. And I don't think in here you have enough justification to go for that overlap. I would rather go for a more realistic pose in there. Not only that, but I think that leaving so much gap between the first phalanxes of the fingers is sort of telling us that your pose is... You see, well, let's put it down another way. You see, you never quite see that much gap between the first phalanxes of my fingers, even if I keep them fairly relaxed. Yeah, the index is a bit out, but this looks like a fist with the index out, and the characteristic of the fist really is that there is no gap between index and between middle ring and pinky. If you leave a gap, you're kind of removing that pose. So you're telling us that's not true, that's not the pose I need there. And I think the thumb should probably be somewhere here instead. So I think in here, if you need to scale the phalanxes, like often happens in animation, do it. But I think you can just rotate them one against another so that they're very compact, and then you have your index sticking out wherever that needs to be. Okay, forgive me for this crappy drawing. Then I would keep... I think this I was at the mall thing you have to decide: is this an accent where it's which is based on an arc? I was at the mall, or is I was at the mall? I was at the mall. Okay, what is this thing? And then I think you need to decide. After you decided that, you got to decide how long this thing stays there. If it stays there, if it's just an arc thing, I was at the mall, then you don't need to stay there. But if it's a touch and go thing, you need to stay there a couple of frames to tell us that there is a touch and go. Right now it feels like you go down there to the pose with the same amount of frames you leave. I'm pretty sure there is a difference, but the thing is, it's hard to read. So 2, 3, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we still have 1 frame, 2 frames. Actually, you're staying there quite enough. 3, 4, 5, 6. So yeah, you're going there and you leave that place roughly in the same amount of frames, about 6 frames. So there is no difference in terms of timing between going there and coming back, which means that you essentially are losing your accent, I think. So I think in there,
I was at the mall. I was shopping.
I was at the mall. Perhaps you could go there faster than when you come back. And then it feels like you're coming back this fast onto the chin because the shot is finishing and you really need to get there with the pose. But I mean, the audio seems to suggest that you could put, I don't know, 5 more frames at the end of the shot if you really need them to make this action a bit more organic. Okay.
I know you were following me today.
I wasn't following. What? No. I was at the mall. I was shopping.
Then now I'm looking at the head.
I know you were following me today.
I wasn't following. What? No. I was at the mall. I was shopping.
I know you were following me today.
I wasn't following. What?
So
Following? What?
I think you're losing the what accent, and I think you're losing it because I think you're a bit late on that. You're a couple of frames late. A good thing about doing the wah sound is that as you do an open vowel, you tend to raise the nose. If I you tend to raise the nose. Okay, so a what like this one is a great opportunity to do a nice what, what, instead of just being down there. So perhaps you could anticipate this motion with the head so that on the what you're going down already a bit more than what you are now. And the problem is that you move the head so much immediately after the what that you lose the what because you don't leave the audience enough time to read that what. So I think you need to try and stay there with the head a couple of frames longer before going against the wall. Plus now you're going against the wall in 1, 2, 3 frames and you are against the wall. That's a bit too much. I mean, if I had to move the head that way in 3 frames, I would probably smack it against something. I think it's way too fast there. Okay, so I would rather stay there a bit longer and take a bit longer to go against the wall.
No.
And I think the no action would benefit from some anticipation there. It seems like you're simply just gliding into the next pose there, right? What about as you go to the right, you leave the nose a bit late so it stays a bit more on the left, so that it's going to, on the no you're going to have a stronger accent, so it will be something like no, something like that. I don't know, something that has some overlap in the nose and a pose that could help you as an anticipation rather than just gliding into the pose. And that will make the whole accent a lot more readable.
No, I was at the mall. I was No, I was at the mall.
The last motion of the head in here, it's a bit strange because it feels like you're rotating the head this much counterclockwise, but the neck is not doing anything. See that? Doesn't feel like the neck is taking part to it. Sorry. And then after 145, you start having the neck taking part of it.
Oh, no,
If you look at it, you can clearly see that the neck is sort of rotating something like 30 degrees on top of the neck without the neck even doing anything. I think you could help with the neck, so there should probably be more motion with the neck here at the beginning than there is here at the end. And the mole is another accent where you don't have an anticipation. I mean, if you wanted to say I was at the mall, you don't want to say just I was at the mall like this. If you do I was at the mall, I was at the mall, you start a bit higher with the nose perhaps, and then you go down to the pose. You're not doing this kind of crazy anticipations that you always usually do at the beginning when you start animating, but you still want to respect the principle of anticipation. Right now it doesn't quite feel like you're anticipating the motion.
I know you were
In terms of lip sync instead,
following me today.
wasn't following
Me today.
wasn't
Today.
wasn't
Me today.
it doesn't feel like you're using that sort of breathless huh that she says at the beginning when she says I wasn't following.
Following me today.
wasn't
It doesn't quite feel like you're using that. It feels like you in your mind you're doing an I, so subject. So you're saying I, and that's what she says because you read the script and you know what she says, but you're ignoring
wasn't following
what the sound is telling you.
Following me today.
I think in there should be something a bit more, some sort of action on the some breathless pose in there. And I think on 99 in general, I feel like the first I'm not very sure about that, but I feel like after an F that you kept for a couple of frames, it would be good if perhaps you moved a bit faster the mouth open so that you would be into a no a bit earlier, because it feels a bit late.
following wasn't following wasn't following wasn't following
Yeah, well, the problem really is that your accent is on the O of following, right? But you say the word, but you're not acting it yet.
wasn't following what
So it feels like you're late. It feels like the lip sync is late. The lip sync is not that late, in fact. But the fact that your accent is about 2 frames late now makes the lip sync feel a bit odd.
wasn't following what
I think this should happen probably a couple of frames later on the following.
following what no following what
And as I said earlier, even this what accent is a bit late. The head is, I mean, the what is nearly done and the head is just starting the motion, so I think that's probably a problem there that would make your animation a lot stronger. In terms of facial expressions, emotions, and so forth. Now, one thing I tend to do when I do motion of mouths is that I track the arcs on the corners of the mouth. If you look at this transition, you see your transition linearly in the mouth there between one pose and another without any anticipation, without any tracking on the arcs on the corners, so it feels a bit stiff. You should treat the mouth like some sort of rubber band that the form stretches and squashes all the time, and if you push it in one direction a lot, then you don't want to freeze there unless you're doing some sort of embarrassed smile or something like that.
wasn't following what no what no what
I feel like the what would be a great opportunity to open up for a very short time the eyes and the mouth, the whole face really, but just for a fraction of a moment, really. And then to go back with the closed eyes, I feel like you're spending way too much time with the eyes closed in here. You're spending about 2 seconds with no eye contact. Editorial in a movie would ask you to make this character look somewhere, because they would feel that you're disconnecting for the audience from the audience a bit too long in here. And I think the what would give you a nice concept. Would be like what, and then you will go back to be closed or whatever. I think you can try it on a layer and see if it works.
What? No, I was at the mall. I was shopping.
I know you weren't following me today.
I wasn't following. What?
There's something odd in the way the hand goes, the right hand in here. Again, too much overlap there, and the pose is just, it looks a bit like a glove, you know, one of those kitchen rubber gloves filled with water. Okay, it doesn't feel like these fingers are in control in this pose. As a result, you kind of lose the pose. I think this could even work, perhaps. I don't know, maybe if you had the index and the middle a bit closer to one another, it would work better, it would look better. I don't know. But then in here you have a Nike pop, see that? And the arc of the hand here is a bit weird. And you have a lot of changes in position of the fingers there, but they are not really motivated, not that I can think of. So again, in here I would go keep the the starting pose, keep the end, and go in there and put a couple of breakdowns in the middle, following the arc I want to have. And then I will keep only the beginning and the last pose of the fingers and see in the middle what needs doing, if anything. Okay, so right now I feel like you're moving a lot of stuff, but there is really no need to do that.
No, I was at the mall. I was.
There's a bit of glitchy movement in the knee down here at around 135 or so. If you look at it, you see it glitches. I don't know what that is, but you can certainly fix that.
No, I was at the mall.
And then it glitches again later on at 146. It moves nicely forward, and then during the follow through just freezes in there. If you look at it, you can feel it. And then at the end, again, freezes. Moves without any anticipation and freezes. This kind of stuff is, I know it's a very little detail at the bottom of the frame, but since it's something that happens in the hands as well, I think you have to think a bit more in terms of in anticipations, action, follow through, and trying to identify start pose, end pose, and then put a breakdown in there to define what's the arc there, rather than going frame by frame and trying to clean the animation moving forward to plot it. I think it's very difficult to plot it. So if the delivery of this animation is 1 week from now, as I think it is, I think this is what I would do, and you have time to do it. Double check this deformation of the eye. I think in here on this frame you could possibly already be looking in the direction of whatever you need to look at.
No, you weren't following me today.
I wasn't following. What?
And I'm not sure where the focus of this action is in terms of eyelines. So this pose, which is kind of cool, is looking at somewhere over, I guess over here, somewhere over there. But then I look at the previous eye line, which is here, and it's not the same pose. It looks like this eye is looking a lot more towards this side of the screen. And then I look at the first, and she's looking again much further to the right. I think you need to keep focusing on a spot so that whenever she opens the eyes and she's interacting with the character we don't see, we understand she's always looking at the same person there. You can't afford, I mean, eyelines are super important. Apart from that, the piece is potentially a good piece. I think you need to possibly act more on the accents of the sound. You have to listen to the sound more, see what it tells you. And if a character is making sounds, just try to act on those. It's not easy. It's not very easy, especially when you're controlling a very complicated scene in 3D. But it pays back usually. And in general, you need to pay a lot more attention to the various arcs, anticipations, follow through, because it feels to me that you're putting a lot of that attention into plotting the action frame by frame forward, but you're losing in this process the general motion, the general action. I mean, what's the nature of the action I'm doing with, I don't know, the hand in here? What is it that it is doing? And what are the minimum, what's the minimum amount of poses I do need to send this message through? Okay, I don't need every single frame with a pose in there. Usually I don't. But what is it that I really need? If you go and plot, then you find yourself having to you find yourself being a slave to the plotting of your own keys, because now you don't feel like changing anything in the next frame because you plotted all the frames until this point. So of course you are invested. You don't want to touch that work. A solution to that could be to use layers. That would let you even defy your own habit, I guess. But layers, they tend to make everything float if you don't know how to use it, or even, I would say, even by default, they tend to make stuff float if you're not very attentive in the way you use them. Anyhow, I think you can clean this. I think you can make it look good. It just takes a bit of work, but you have a few days ahead of you, so you can do it, in my opinion. Bye bye.